The object of education is to prepare the young to educate themselves throughout their life. Heartiest greetings to one and all present here. Today, I, Ishika Seth, from Maestro Teaching Solutions, wholeheartedly welcome you all for our webinar on the topic, The Science of Learning, to be taken by Ms. Jharna Anand, Vice Principal, The Indian School, Sector 24, Rohini, Delhi. Before beginning today's session, we would like to introduce ourselves as an educational service provider managed by a panel of experienced and eminent educationalists with a cumulative experience of more than 10 decades. We cater to the individual needs of schools, teachers, students, and parents by providing the best job opportunities for them. We also conduct webinars and workshops for the students, teachers, and parents to enhance their learning experience. We request you to stay connected with us till the end of the session, as a feedback form will be shared with you at the end. You're requested to fill out the form to mark your attendance. A certificate of participation will be issued based on that. So stay with us for an insightful session. Now, I would like to welcome our resource person for the day, Ms. Jharna Anand, Vice Principal, The Indian School. Ma'am, it's a matter of great honor and delight to welcome you on behalf of Maestro Teaching Solutions. Ms. Jharna Anand is an educator and educational leader who has been learning and contributing to the world of K-12 education for more than 2 decades. Her association with CBSE, CBSEI, and Cambridge International has added depth to the praxis of pedagogical leadership. A curious learner, Ms. Anand sincerely believes every child deserves a well-prepared and reflective teacher. Ma'am has set up an international branch of the school right from the conceptualization to establishment in terms of qualitative systems, structure, and people development. Ma'am has received the Distinguished Teacher Award 2013 by Rotary Club. She has also received Samyak Samman 2016 by the Samyak Society for her excellence in society and Lions Club. Ma'am's vision about education and child pedagogy has been published in numerous online and print magazines and is highly appreciated. Ma'am, thank you for being associated with us. It's a matter of great pleasure and honor to have you among us. Now I request Ms. Jharna Anand ma'am to take over the session and share her expertise with us.
Thank you, dear Ishika, for such a lovely introduction. In fact, when I was hearing about my own self, I could not believe as if it is I who is being talked about. Before I take it up further, a big thank you to all the participants also. Being a Saturday in the evening to spare an hour for our growth, it means quite a lot. I will now at this juncture start sharing my screen and kindly bear with that. Just as you can say, the science of learning and my name is there on the screen. But before I continue on this journey, there are a few disclaimers which I need to share with my co-practitioners over there. Anything whatsoever is coming onto the slides has nothing to do with my originality, in the sense that the work whatsoever I have brought before the audience over here, it has been read and studied by me or curated or practiced in the classroom, but the real origin for this work, especially the 6 key questions that we are going to dabble with, out of which looking at the time in a practical manner, I do think of covering up 4 in detail without compromising the quality. We would be reaching 6, that's the goal, but the achievable part is 4 key questions we must dabble with in depth. These key questions come from one of the works, the PDF, which has been undertaken by an American organization, the Deans for Impact. So the origin lies there. But yes, because I've practiced it along with my team of teachers, so here I come with the thinking process before you. With everybody's permission, I begin. Hopefully it is visible to everyone.
Yes, it's visible.
So the purpose of this orientation, the 3 key points which are there before us, summarize the existing research from cognitive science, connect this research to its practical implications, and answer 6 key questions in an informed and guided manner. Over here, I'll take a minute and I will focus on to the colored technical terms cognitive science, basically against the backdrop of National Education Policy 2020, the vision which comes before us. Whenever in India we have talked about education, it has, to the best of my understanding and as per my opinion, it has been more about the systems and the policies which are set up. But with the kind of changes in the backdrop, we teachers have as if missed the real pole star, and that is how does the brain of a human child, especially, learn. The way it is important for a tree that it must have the roots, the same way I think the leaves, the different kind of pedagogical practices which we carry on in the classroom, they are kind of the leaves. If we want that the tree of education and learning remains robust, then as a teacher, I sincerely believe, and I have seen the positives coming out of this approach, that if, as a reflective teacher, my eyes are on the brain science, how does a human brain learn? And what are the conditions which make it learn to the optimum best capacities? Then my classroom practice changes altogether. Whatever the National Education Policy 2020 document is envisioning about, it also becomes available and possible within the reaches. So that's the important part for me, the first one. Second, whatever the research has happened in the field of cognitive sciences, as a teacher, what should I be doing in the classroom with the clarity that, okay, which practical implications are useful for me? Whenever we attend any kind of a training or a webinar via online or in person, most of the times the teaching fraternity is either trained or is expected to focus on classroom practices, the learning instructions or the activities, just as we keep on addressing them. So that is about how things are supposed to be done in the classroom. Where do we miss out?
Ma'am is also a coordinator for Eco Mentoring Program.
According to me, is the why. Whatever we are doing in the classroom, why are we doing it? That also coming up from the perspective of a child learning, the human brain learning, then it makes my responsibility and task as a teacher easier and doable. Connected to that, there are 6 questions, they say, which every teacher has to think of before going to the classroom and to try to master so that they become better practitioners. So the highlighted words I had already picked up, so I'll be skipping. The 6 key questions are: how do students understand new ideas as per brain science? Second one, how do students learn and retain new information? Third, how do students solve problems? The most loved one, how does learning transfer to new situations inside or outside the classroom? What motivates students to learn, especially the teenagers? And what are the common misconceptions about how students think and learn? So these are the 6 key questions which were supposed to be captured, but I think keeping the time in mind, the first 4 we would try to conquer and understand to the basics for sure. Please spend some time trying to remember. I'm not calling it the sentence. Please spend some time trying to remember. The key word is remember. Do not write it down anywhere. Remember the above group of words before we move on, because we all will be tested later to find out how well we have done. So, thick wallet tea of Mira sees trained. Spend some time trying to remember. I take a pause and count till 5 within me. Try to remember. Let's move on. The first key question: how do students understand new ideas? Before I pick up key question 1 and key question 2 subsequently, it is important for us to understand the basic stem, the spine. If we understand 2 basic concepts, then 2 of the key questions are under our belt. Please have a good look at this display of the collected, collated work here. Through the diagram, we are trying to capture in the circle blue new ideas and the previous knowledge, and the students learning new ideas by reference to the ideas they already know. This is something which we keep on hearing about. And if you will peer a bit more onto the screen, you will happen to notice that 2 important words, rote learning, is mentioned, which diagrammatically is being tried to capture. There is no connection between new and the existing learning. If a teacher introduces anything new in the classroom, but it doesn't make connection with the prior existing learning, so that's just the rote learning. What makes a rote learning transforms it into the deep learning? That is the connections, the wavy lines, the subsequent bottom. If you will see here, these wavy lines, when these interconnections are formed together, so that calls for the reflection and thinking at the end of the learner. Then the deep learning starts to happen. And at the bottom, you would notice it's mentioned constructivist. That's how we learners or the teachers are supposed to construct and add a new meaning to the information which is coming our way. In the pink box, or the orange box rather, the edge which is here, are the implications for our classroom. If we understand as an educator that whatever new information I'm bringing to the classroom, we always say that we need to begin our lessons by connecting the information which we are going to present before the children with the prior knowledge. So why is it being done? It's being done because in our brains we have, let's just imagine as if our human brain has got two buckets. One is of the short term memory, one is that of the long term memory, and any information coming to my brain stays there through the senses or through the thinking during the in the moment time, is supposed to be the part of STM, the short term memory box. Now this short term memory box is supposed to hold the information at most 5 or 6, or if there is a superhuman, so 8 pieces of new information, but nothing beyond that. It's difficult to hold that information. So the brain, in case of a child, if we make it possible during this time, that during STM, during the information when it is entering into the short-term memory box of the child, we create such kind of opportunities where whatever the prior information is present in the long-term memory box, the bridging is formed, so it is much more understandable and far reaching for a child. So we say that, okay, in the terms of curriculum, it is important that we have a well sequenced curriculum. And in fact, to explain the concepts and ideas, it's important that we use the analogies. That's an example. The different ideas when we are presenting in the classroom, we can use the analogies. Analogies are effective if we teachers elaborate on them, but we direct our attention. These are the key terms, the key information, to the crucial similarities which are existing between the existing knowledge and what is to be learned. So this slide happens to take up the concept that I talked about a bit earlier, the STM, the conscious processing of the information coming from one source and going to the long-term memory, the storage and retrieval of data, which happens at that end. So to learn, we say, on to one side we can see the brain science tells us that to learn, it is imperative for students that information transfers from short-term memory box to long-term memory box. And the students have limited capacities in STM in short term. And if at that point of time, instead of just 2 or 3 newer bits or chunks of information, we are bringing lot many learning ideas, the children, they become overwhelmed and cognitively it becomes too demanding for them, and that's why the learning process is impeded if we provide too much of the information in one go. So classroom implication of that is that in the classroom, not only the connectivity of the two ideas but also the scaffolding. Cognitively, if we are presenting an information, a piece of information or new pieces of information, and if it is cognitively demanding, then it is important that we provide scaffolds or support to the children in the form of the worked examples. Another implication for the classroom in the orange box, the guidance or the scaffolding is supposed to get faded with each subsequent stage later on until the children are good to go and become independent. Second possibility is that in order to work upon the same idea or a concept, let's use different modalities, just as the word is saying that modality is the different ways or means to learn or talk about the same concept. The sources of information, for example, whatever we are working on, we can bring two different sources of information, or might be same kind of information but through two different media. But those media also need to be picked up very carefully because they have to be complemented. If we as teachers are not good at our choices, it will further confuse the learners. The third point in the orange box, the last one, comes with an explanation and with a rider. Explanations also are very much important. Direct teaching, at times, direct teaching in the terms of the cognitively demanding or new piece of information. So it's not a sin to teach the children directly. The didactic works, but we need to understand that the content which we are teaching directly, explicitly, along with the explanations or modeling, has to ensure that students are not overwhelmed, and at the same time, it's not just an explanation. If we are providing the information, the interpretation still has to be worked upon, designed by the teacher, that the children, in case I present one piece of information in a chunk, so the children take some time to digest it, to practice it further before I move on with the next more complicated piece of information. I am again facing a bit of an issue in just moving it. Is my screen visible? Whatever can go wrong, possibly it will go wrong in this session itself. Let me pray to God.
No, it's
Uh,
absolutely fine, ma'am. It's absolutely
I do
fine.
understand, however, I will just kindly bear with me. The more the participants are getting added up, the more challenging it is becoming for the screen to not to freeze. Just kindly bear with me. Shall I try with the new share?
Not an issue, ma'am. You can.
Let me, if you can bear with me, if you allow, Seth ma'am, may I leave the meeting and re-enter
Sure,
if it
sure.
is perfectly
Yes,
okay with
yes, ma'am.
everybody around?
Yes, absolutely fine. Not an issue,
Thanks for
ma'am.
your patience. I'm still doing something. Let me see if it works again. This is another fact which we all need to understand. It's my sorry for that. It's my daughter's work, which you can see in the corner. I have sought her help. She read it and she interpreted it and drew it, illustrated in such a way. Most of the times, we think that cognitive development, the brain develops through a fixed sequential age-related stages, and but it's not true. The mastery of new concepts can happen in fits and starts. If we introduce an idea, let's say, of mathematical concept at class 6 level, not necessary it will be 100% mastered at that end by every child. The same concept can be mastered after 6 months time, or we in fact, as individual learners also must have experienced this. When we were in class 5, the maths, it was a gigantic phobia for us. But when we were in class 8, the same concept appeared to be very easy peasy. And we would wonder, oh my God, what was wrong with my brain at that point of time? Or at times, it so happens in the case of the learners who are much ahead in the terms of mastery, exhibiting or demonstrating their mastery. At times, though Tathagat are very limited, but still their age may be of 14 years. However, their understanding is, or the quickness of the brain is much beyond the age, the mental ages or cognitive ages, much ahead on the growth curve as far as the age, the chronological age is concerned. So, in the orange box, we need to understand what is the implication for us as an educator, that we should not keep the teaching or learning content away from the children, only believing that okay, this is now the developmentally right age for them. They cannot understand it because they are just 10 years old, or they cannot understand it because they are just 15 years old. If you have to take a decision whether shall I move ahead in the learning, as far as the learning is concerned with this particular child, though of 10 years or 12 years, so how to take the decision? The decision has to be taken up only on the basis of the last question, which is in the orange box. Has the student mastered the prerequisites? So every student or a learner is good to go from one stage to the other in case has mastered the first stage, the prerequisite. We are in love with the idea of conducting remedial classes for the children, that okay, there are gaps of learning for them, so let's move, let's just create special learning environment for them, and come up with the uh, essential teaching learning concept for them, and then execute the classes. And chances are that whatever the kind of effort that we are putting in, the kind of dividends that we are expecting will not match. So there we need to again reflect, pause, and wonder and find out, the debug the process, that okay, with every individual learner whosoever is in my class for the under the so-called of remediation process, have they really mastered the prerequisites? If the child is not able to show me the correct division process, is not good at operation of division, so has he really understood how to add and subtract? Is the concept of subtraction really good or great with that child? Moving on quickly, the next key question: how do students learn and retain new information? So just pause a bit over here and think of your own classroom practice. How do you help your students to retain information? Do we expect them? Please just have a self check. Do we expect the children that okay, this is the sheet which is given to you, 2 days are given, you commit it to your memory, and tomorrow I'll be taking a test? Or we chunk up the whole content, that okay, it has got 5 paragraphs, you learn first, you learn two today, and the next third and fourth the next day, and once it is there committed to your memory in the terms of that short term memory box or long term memory box, so you spend some time over peer, and then things will be good to go. We need to remember that over here remembering is dependent on frequency and recency. and the curve of forgetting. These are the two key concepts. If we have a very clear understanding of it, so it's kind of like root of the tree of education or learning, on which rests too many branches and leaves. First is the frequency and recency. Very true. The more we revise things, so we say, okay, better we are at that retain the information retainment is going to be better if I'm revising it frequently, and the more recent it is, the better it is. In fact, another ironical concept is of the curve of forgetting. They say that it's important to forget because you want to learn. If you want to recall something, it's important to forget. If you keep on revising the content on everyday basis, it's not going to help us out. Please have a good look at the graph which is being depicted here. 100% of accuracy of recall. If we, for example, you would hear only the kind of ideas which are coming, which we are probably you have heard anywhere somewhere, or might be a one or two bits which are new for you. So after 10 minutes, the brain will start fizzling out, and that information we would start losing on it. However, after a day, we go back and wherever we have taken down the notes, we refer to it. So the images, the memory will come back to me. Then after a week's time, if I revise the content, then it becomes refreshed. So accuracy of recall after a month, after 6 months. Please focus on to the two darkened words over here, remember and meaning. There are two basic spines to understand if we want to ensure our children have retained the information. So we must focus on the memory. Information is often withdrawn from memory just as it went in. We usually want students to remember what information means. However, where do we miss out? The why part. The why part of information is also very, very important, so that so they should think, and if we want to work upon why, then it is important for us to create such kind of learning opportunities in the classroom where children are adding self-constructed meaning, the connections, the personal life connections with the content that they have to remember. It will become a bit easier to understand in the practical terms. Let's focus on that orange box. Teachers can assign students tasks that require explanation, answering questions about how or why something happened, or that require students to meaningfully organize material. These tasks focus students' attention on the meaning of course content. Over here, I'll pick up an analogy. Just as I was talking about in the first question itself. Suppose we are sitting in a language English class, and our language English teacher asks us that, okay, these are the five articles which I have gathered, let's say, about National Education Policy of 2020, and you should know whatever is there within these five newspaper articles. So how will we start decoding that information? I'm sure we all would sit down, read, and make notes, because those five articles, let's say, in case have 5,000 words in totality within them. If I have to master that information, if I have to not forget that information, then my brain will automatically start to organize that information in such a way that it makes a sense to me. Hopefully, this analogy suffice to capture these 2 points. And the curve of forgetting tells me that, okay, when those notes are ready, so I need to go and revisit to read those notes. No, 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 no. If I every time just go open up that page of the register where I have written those notes, and like any kind of a religious text, I am just reading it directly from that page, it's not going to serve me that much purpose as if I do have that notebook with me, but I do not open up the page. I sit down, reflect, and recall without looking at the content. Without looking at the content, the brain has to exercise, has to work hard to recall, okay, what bits of information had I collated there. And wherever the gap comes in, at that point of time, I go and refer to those notes. Then that information which comes to me during this circumstance, when the brain is really hungry to know what was the missing piece, it is supposed to be with me for the times to come. The next, teachers can help students learn to impose meaning on hard to remember content. Stories and mnemonics are particularly effective at helping students do this, which we have been practicing. I remember when in the trigonometry in class 10, the formula were learnt by me, at least, using that mnemonic. So what is mnemonic? That's also an easy way to create a connect with the content which is before me. Next most important part is we again, Indian teachers, especially in Indian scenario, we are We always say that practice makes it perfect, and the more we practice, the better the information would be in our mind. But an adjective before it, right practice makes us more perfect. Please have a good look at the colorful bars which are here. Suppose these are three chunks of pieces of information: A, blue color; B, different kinds, different kind of a concept or different piece of information; and C is a different one. And the second one, that is a mass practice. Let's say box A stands for the questions based on concept of addition. B stands for the questions based on subtraction, and green boxes stand for just let's say that division itself. So if I am giving the opportunities, creating the opportunities in the classroom for the children to practice one kind of questions in one way, then the second, then the third, in comparison to that, if I create an intermix, an interleaved practice where I mix up all three of them together, and then I expect the children to practice it, it will take time, definitely. The longer, in comparison to those 10 minutes every day, if I give a mixture, it may take 20 minutes in the first go, but the retention, the grasp, and the mastery of the concept will be much more memorable for the times to come. The orange box, again, as an implication, teachers can space practice in the terms of time, with content being reviewed across weeks or months. The rationale is again the curve of forgetfulness that we had referred to earlier, and it helps the students remember that content over the long term. And it's not just a kind of whim that is being presented or shared with the co-practitioners. These are research backed up classroom practices which have been found to be giving the results. Second one, they say teachers can explain to students that trying to remember, not reading and referring every time, trying to remember something makes memory more long lasting than other forms of studying. For that purpose, we can use low or no stakes quizzes in the classes to do this. We can also use those self tests, the quick 5-minute self test or 10-minute self test. It's good that forget it, but if they refer to the content back again and they come back, so next time the success rate definitely increases. Next, teachers can interleave, that is simple alternate practice of the different types of content. How do students solve problems? What does it mean to understand concepts? Let's forget about that yet. How do students solve problems? They say, okay, one of the stock phrases or responses could be, the more we know about the concepts, the more we have mastered the concepts, then it becomes easy for us to solve the problems. But life doesn't work that way. The real part is, excuse me, each subject area has some set of facts that if committed to long-term memory, I'm just reading, aids problem solving by, this is the important part, we become better at solving the problems when we keep our short-term memory box free. If my STM is free, the working memory, the short-term memory is free, more bits of information, more observation of the surroundings can be undertaken by the brain at that point of time. So, excuse me, freeing working memory resources. And the second aspect is illuminating contexts in which existing knowledge and skills can be applied. So the size and content of this set can vary by subject matter. Teachers again the tables for us, or the phonic sounds, where we say that yes, that rote memorization is very much required. So the educationists, they are divided over this debate. Okay, is it really supposed to be committed to the memory? Half of them, they say that yes, if you commit, let's say, match tables to memory, then it saves the time at the time of the calculation part itself. So but first thing is, this is for sure. Again, this has paused, so I have to go back. Kindly bear with me. If I touch my screen, so sorry for that interference and that stoppage. Oh, now it's working. So it's for the audience to think. Can you think of any two such sets of facts which are pertaining to your subject area, where you think that okay, these, like mathematical formula, or in language we have those transcription symbols, that if we have mastered them, then it becomes easy to decode the dictionary which is there. How to pronounce the words, it becomes easy for all of us, and it'll start working hopefully. The examples which are here, the maths facts or the letter sound pairings in the elementary grades, the example which I had already touched upon earlier. Please pay attention to the line, a child who stops to calculate may make an error to lose track of the larger problem. So the advantages of learning to read by phonics are well established. The next part is, if we want our children to become good at solving the problems, then we need to train them also for it. And over here, the art and the mastery of giving the effective feedback comes in. So if we want our children to become good at solving problems, first thing is that we need to create such kind of learning environment in the classroom or otherwise beyond that also, that their working memory remains freely available to think about the problem. The second one is how to solve a problem. The process itself is also very intricate. It doesn't just depend on to the concept mastery. So the processes, the mental processes which are undertaken, we have to make our children learners better at that. And effective feedback is essential to acquire new knowledge and skills so that they become better at solving. So here is a kind of a fill up exercise. And I would not say that unmute yourself, please, because that's the organizers have told me already. The good feedback is, please put down your answers in the chat box. You may are dash and clear. A good feedback is this and it is dash on the task rather than the student. And the last, and it is dash, it begins with letter E to make the life easy, and dash on dash rather than merely very fine performance. So very quickly, I'll give the responses myself. The good feedback is specific and clear, and it is focused on the task rather than the student, the person. And a good feedback is explanatory and focused on improvement rather than merely very fine performance, that okay, this was done good and okay, and this it's not just about commenting onto the status, it is also about how to do things better next time. So it is action oriented. Fourth one, how does learning transfer to new situations inside or outside the classroom? The transfer of knowledge or skills to a novel problem requires both. Please pay attention. If we want that learning gets transferred to new situations, then the knowledge and skill to a novel problem requires both knowledge of the problem's context and a deep understanding of the problem's underlying structure. Teachers can ensure that students have sufficient background knowledge to appreciate the context of a problem. Here is an anecdote. So this is a small short story. Like if you want to solve the problem, then we cannot focus only on the problem. We need to understand what is in the backdrop of the problem, and we also need to understand the nature of the problem. What are the undercurrents of it? So please have a good look. There was once a little fish and a tadpole who shared the same pond. They were great friends and played together every day, but one day the tadpole grew legs and his tail began to disappear. Eventually, the tadpole left the pond as a fully grown frog. The little fish often wondered where his four-footed friend had gone, but days and weeks went by and the frog did not return. Then one day the frog splashed back into the pond, saying he had seen extraordinary things. Like what? Said the frog. The frog I'll take a pause here. The frog went on to describe birds as having wings and two legs. What did the fish make of this? The fish, please pay attention. The fish imagined a bird to look just like a fish with two frog's feet and fins for wings, because that's what she has seen in her life. So she could not think of anything else but a fish with wings and frog's feet. So we focus only on the problem, but we do not know what is lying beyond the problem. So that's why it's important for us to make our children see beyond the picture. And that's why the research skills come into the play. Hopefully, my fish changes the position. The focus for you now, instead of the bird, if you were there and you were to draw the people as per fish's perspective, then what kind of people you would have drawn, just to keep you mentally occupied and awake and interested in this. We understand new ideas through examples also, but it's often hard to see the unifying underlying concepts in different examples. So again, the classroom implications for it. A few examples are given. First one is again from maths, which is picked up the children in case they have to compare the problems with different surface structures. So share the same underlying structure. For example, they may learn to calculate area of rectangle by an example of a word problem using a tabletop, and they may not immediately recognize this knowledge as relevant in a word problem that asks a student to calculate the area of a soccer field. But by comparing the problems, this practice helps the students to perceive and remember the underlying structure, the common structure in two different situations. Second possibility, there are many multi-step procedures that teachers can encourage students to identify and label the substeps required for solving a problem. It happens many times. We expect our children that, okay, if there is a question which is, let's say, is expecting them to discuss a stand, and the same stand is supposed to be evaluated. The question stem is about evaluation, and possibly the same kind of a stand can also be expected to be justified at their end. So the basic understanding the nuances of the differences, what do we need and how do we need to present an answer when it's only for discussion, how does it vary from the expectation of justification or evaluation. So the nuances which are present in between those procedures, we make them obvious part of teaching and learning process, and we expect them to identify and label. It can be a kind of a chronological connection, or it can be idea wise too. And the more we practice this, students become more likely to recognize the underlying structures of the problem and to apply the problem solving steps to the other problems. Teachers can alternate concrete examples like word problems and abstract representations to help students recognize the underlying structure of problems. So something which we see with our mind's eye, but something which we see right before our eyes, that strategy can also be utilized. The important factor, what motivates students to learn, because I think nowadays, against the kind of backdrop, this is the biggest challenge. The intrinsic motivation of the children, we believe, is missing. So we have to work on the extrinsic factors to keep them motivated. But the brain science again throws $1 million question to us: can we understand the way a human brain works? And if we understand it, can we actually use it as a practitioner in our classroom to motivate our children intrinsically, which doesn't involve any kind of a bribing, but it's a kind of a mental habit which we create in the classroom. So the first factor, they say, the learning environment matters quite a lot. These are the understandings which come from the brain science altogether. Belief about intelligence are very important predictors of student behavior in school. When we believe as teachers, and when we make our children believe that yes, with practice, with persistence, intelligence can be increased. It happens. Self-determined motivation, that intrinsic, which leads to better long-term outcomes than controlled motivation, that external motivation. So like it's a standard fact which we know. The ability to monitor their own thinking can also help students. See, here the metacognition comes into the picture. But there is a rider again. There is a condition over here which we are not able to see and appreciate. So please pay attention to this aspect. The two different parts of understanding in this idea. One, we all understand that yes, ability to monitor one's own thinking helps us to identify what we are able to do or what we do not know. But even if I am able to understand what I can do or what I know, it does not guarantee that I am able to judge my own learning standards or understanding. So the ability to monitor their own thinking from students' perspective can help students identify what they do and do not know. But people are often unable to accurately judge their own learning and understanding. That's why the feedback and a teacher's presence in the form of a facilitator and an activator, just as nowadays they say, becomes all the more important, and none of the technologies can replace a teacher because of this. Third point, students will be more motivated and successful in academic environments when they believe that they belong. So again, that humanistic view of learning, that the learning theory, the way it tells us that when we believe in our children that yes, you can do, when we create such kind of an accepting environment, then brain definitely starts working for good. So how can educator contribute to the learner's motivation? This is the orange box which is coming on this slide. Teachers should know that students are more motivated if they believe that intelligence and ability can be improved through hard work. Again, a technical word before that is that growth mindset which we associate with. Teachers can contribute to students' beliefs about their ability to improve their intelligence. How? By praising effort and strategies rather than their ability. Teachers can prompt students to feel more in control of their learning by encouraging them to set goals. But we need to appreciate that what is the nature of that goal. Is that goal learning goal, or is that goal performance goal? Learning goal, okay, I am able to draft an effective, persuasive article. I know at least that 60% of the formula, and I'm able to deliver and write at least 3 convincing arguments. Or the performance goal, this time in my pre boards, when I wrote the examination, oh, I only got 10 on 20 in my persuasive article. Teachers control a number of factors related to reward and praise too. So it's easy to say, like, okay, we need to reward our children, we need to praise our children. But in the terms of reward, also we need to understand what is the nature of the reward, whether the reward offered is verbal or tangible, whether it is expected or unexpected at the end of the child, whether the praise is offered for effort or completion or quality of performance, and whether the praise or a reward is occurring immediately or after a delay, because timing matters a lot. Just as feedback, we say, is also supposed to be time bound. If a child performs something today, we have checked the set, and we know that, okay, all over the classes, the entire cohort of learners have committed, or they need to work upon these two areas, but we wait for another 20 days to come back onto the task, it will not be that effective because the brain neurons would not be receptive by that time. Teachers can engage students in tasks that will allow them to reliably monitor their own learning. For example, that testing, self-testing, and explanation. Over here, I'm sorry for that error, which was here. This brings us closer to the concept of assessment as learning, that AL. It's not assessment for learning, it's not assessment of learning. It is about involvement of the learner in the process of his or her own learning, and brain works much better because of it. If not, excuse me, if not encouraged to use these tasks as a guide, students are likely to make judgments about their own knowledge based on how familiar their situation feels and whether they have partial or related information. These cues can be misleading. It reminds me that in the junior and the middle wing, it happened. In fact, at the senior secondary level, also during the PTMs, I happened to, and I'm sure all of us must have heard that parents coming and sharing that, man, this particular child, he's doing so well in maths at the tuition, or back at home when he's practicing for his exams, he's always scoring much better. I don't know, we don't know what happens to him or her during the exam condition. So over here lies the rationale, the reason why teachers can reassure students that doubts about belonging are common and will diminish over time. They are children. Teachers can encourage students to seek critical feedback. Over here again, that social learning concept comes into the picture, that most of the times it happens, people, or in fact we with adults also, this happens in our case. If somebody is telling us something, we immediately go defensive and we start giving the reasons, why was it right, why was it not that way, and what was our intention, what not. However, if we address and attack this kind of basic understanding, we challenge ourselves and our belief system. If someone is giving me a feedback, is it actually for finding a fault, or probably I can also relook at the same contribution as the help. That critical feedback is a sign of the other person's belief in me that I can do better, and that's why I have to. But it is easier said than done, because it cannot happen in a day's time. One has to create recesses of that nature. God forbid if something else comes on my screen next. What are the common misconceptions about how students think and learn? It should be an interesting piece for all of you. At the bottom, there is a, it's not going to work at this point, but yes, it's one of the videos which I like, is a kind of a summary. Let's pause over here because it has been a long lecture at my end. So in the chat, please go ahead and put down your responses. What do you think? Is it a true statement as far as the brain is concerned? Students have different learning styles. Humans do not use only 10% of their brains. Is it true? Is it true people are right brained or left brained in the use of their brains? Take a minute, please. Put down your responses in chat. Because of the compulsion, I am not daring to touch the chat option. Hopefully, Miss Sate can help us out. Or the team. Is it true that novices and experts cannot think in all the same ways? And is it true that cognitive development progresses via fixed progression of age related stages? This we addressed in the as a part of the key question one. So here is the cat out of the bag. It's a myth that children have different learning styles. Actually, it's a myth. Though you will go online and 80% of the content which we'll bump into will talk about people have we have developed, fed ourselves all along these lines, that okay, visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic kind of learning styles are there. but it's not true. 100% it's not true, because it doesn't happen. We humans don't learn it that way, learn things that way. Humans do not use only 10% of their brains. Yes, absolutely, it is true. We use 100% of that. People are right brained or left brained in the use of their brains? No. We use both the parts of the brain. However, the irony is that in the classroom setups, academically, we are focusing on to such kind of subject domains which are either left brained or right brained. That's why this the kind of suggestions come up from the departments that please go for art integrated learning. Novices and experts cannot think in all the same way. Yes, it is true. They never think along in the same way. A novice thinks more in the terms of disjointed pieces. Experts, when they look at things, their brain have become so good at picking up patterns that if you present the same piece of information or puzzles to an expert, their brain looks at the information as per a different pattern. And cognitive development progresses via fixed progression of age related stages. No, it doesn't happen that way. Finally, a big thank you. Hopefully, I have touched the time despite all those oddities in between. I am greatly indebted to the patience, and the credits are there, just as I was sharing with you. Whatever the work which has come onto the screen at this point of time, it has nothing to do with my originality. It is from Deans for Impact. The PDF is very much available, hardly 7 pages. But if you like that, then you will automatically be drawn to read it further, to go for deeper understanding, and you will be tempted to take it as a practice in the classroom. If we have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. Chances are I may take it up, I may not take it up, but I can promise for sure that through Al Maestro, I'll try my best to reach you with the responses by any of the ways, any of the means, whatsoever possible. Thank you from my side. So, signing off, Jharna. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Jana ma'am, for such an insightful session. I, on behalf of Maestro Teaching Solution and other teachers who had actually joined the session, want to thank you that you take out time from your busy schedule and gave us such a wonderful vision about the science of learning, but that was actually fascinating all of us. So I thank you teachers for joining us. I had shared the feedback form link there in the chat box. You can give your feedback there for the sessions as well, and you will be getting certificates accordingly as per the feedback form. Thank you, teachers. Thank you, Jana ma'am. Thank you very much. Teachers, we really appreciate if you share your feedback in the chat box as well, so that we can read it for you. Namrata Jaiswal ma'am is saying that, thanks for your guidelines. Obviously, she will be implementing it in the class. So thank you, Jana ma'am.
Thank you to each one of you again for sparing the time. I
Nice
can't thank you
session.
enough. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'll be the last one to sign off from the room.
So I'm getting WhatsApp messages from our teachers who are really enjoying the session, Sajjana ma'am.
Oh, thank God.
Viva ma'am is saying wonderful and very
I really
informative.
required that positive stroke of appreciation because I was feeling ill at ease. Thank you. Thank you. So gracious
Thank
of you.
you. Thank you. Viva ma'am is saying wonderful and very informative. Priya ma'am was also saying it's informative and amazing session. Rajneesh Sharma sir, he is also thanking you for the information, wonderful
Thank you.
information that you shared.
Gratitude.
Wonderful experience, Sana Mansuri ma'am. So teachers, you can actually click on the link there in the chat box, fill the feedback form, and you can leave the session. Thank you very everyone. Neha ma'am is saying absolutely amazing session by Reverend ma'am. Amrish Prasad sir, it's really a amazing workshop.
Thank you, sir.
I will be sharing that session feedback with you all as well, Jana ma'am.
By all means, ma'am.
Ma'am. Very
In case any of the attendees has any kind of a query, subsequently also I am always available. So we may
sure, definitely.
chain of communication is always open.
Vrinda Sharma, could you relate many teaching funders to the science of could relate many teaching funders to the science of learning? So people, teachers are feeling connected with the concepts that you shared.
Thank you.
Kajal Sharma ma'am is saying she found it really interesting and knowledgeable for the students as well.
Only one request, whosoever is in the room, I have experienced that and I feel it in my bones. You just spare, even if you spare reading, let's say for a week's time, 3 hours or 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever you can manage in a week's time onto this concept itself, the science of learning, you will be hooked onto it. Only you have to do one thing: pick up any teaching learning strategy, take it to the classroom. Whatever the science of learning principle has clicked with you, practice it in the classroom, and you will be so relieved and impressed. You will be so confident and proud of your success. I have seen that happening. That's why I'm sincerely, because to know something theoretically is one thing, but to actually take it to the classroom solidifies that. Thank
Teachers,
you.
if you have any query, you can unmute yourself or you can use chat box and ask Jharna ma'am, as she is already there with us. So any queries related to the same, you can actually do. Go ahead. Amrish sir, definitely we will have more sessions and we will try to have these type of sessions on more regular basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I'm around, in case there is any kind of a query, chances are it's not necessary that I know all the answers, but we have a big group of learners here. I'm sure we will be able to discuss and arrive at some kind. Sometimes discourse itself is suffice. So please feel free.
So anybody, any query, you can ask in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask ma'am.
There is a request, ma'am. Will we
Yes,
get the key points of this session in any format? So I'll share the PowerPoint presentation which I prepared, and then our maestro can make it available
yes.
for others.
So we will be sharing the certificates with the teachers and the letter of thanks with them. So definitely we will actually go ahead with that PPT as well.